for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. $265 days into the new year. Only 100 days left. Nobody mentioned that I was 10 days off for the last 3 months. I don't know how it happened. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere. A total undisclosed location. But it is beautiful in here, and I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Here we go. Tonight, very special guest, continuing our first-time guests week. Tonight, night number 3. Lost history explorer Timothy Alberino wraps up the week. 3 first-time guests. Absolutely incredible. Tomorrow night, it is another Fader night with open lines all night long. That's right. Tomorrow night, I was talking to Brad, and he's getting me the files that he shot over at the Conscious Life Expo. So we're going to do some of that tomorrow night. I'll blow out my camera roll from this past weekend, and we'll go through all of that tomorrow night. It was a great conference. It was a great conference. So there you go. Justin just tweeted, "What's the best app for stargazing?" And I went to go. He says, "I remember you saying you had some apps on multiple F2B episodes." And so I go to type in the reply. I use, and then I pick up my phone, and I'm scrolling through, and too many apps on my phone, and I can't find the app. And oh, there it is. It's called Night Sky. Now I've got it. Okay, now I can complete the tweet. I use Night Sky. Okay, there. I got that in. Yeah, that's what I use. Night Sky. And I haven't upgraded. I use the free version, but I think I'm going to upgrade. The free version is great. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really, really, really cool, especially if you want to see what's going on in China, what's above their skies. Just take the, just following your GPS, right? Just bring it down and look at your feet, and you can see the Milky Way through the earth. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Night Sky is what I use. Okay, follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. At JChurchRadio. Yeah, that's what you want to do. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox right here on Twitter. And scrolling through, looking at everybody's gifts. If you it's a great night when I get to, I don't even know how this started. I don't even know how this started, but please, you guys, don't ever change. I mean, this is just what makes me happy is these dancing gifts. Oh, we got the Flintstones tonight. That's the beach party one. That's pretty cool. Oh, more Flintstones. Wow. Tara, those are really, really, really cool. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for that. It just makes my night. Starts the show off right. In-N-Out Burger. Do I do animal style? I've come and gone with animal style. Now, I appreciate the animal style. This is, for those out there that have no idea what I'm talking about right now, there's a secret menu at In-N-Out. There's a whole nother set of languages and terms and things that are used there. And you could probably go online, In-N-Out, secret menu. There's a whole list of things that you can do with your burgers and fries. Now, they only have, that's it. They have burgers and fries and stuff to drink. They don't have some crazy menu. It doesn't exist. There's no desserts. No salads. You don't go to In-N-Out for a salad. That's not what they're about. Burgers, single, double, triple, or whatever. You can get as many patties as you want. And 3 kinds of shakes, Cokes. That's about it. That's it. I think that's the entire menu. You pull up and you look. It's like, okay, single, double, triple, fries, drink. That's it. And the menu is like 15 words. But animal style is one of those things on that secret menu. And so you can order it that way. But you can get your French fries animal style. And I do that once in a while. And when I do it, I'm usually pretty hungry, and you think that you're going to plow through it. And what that is their secret sauce and grilled onions, and I think they put something else on the fries. I'm not so sure. And I never eat it. Well, I do, but I don't finish it. One of the things I do like at In-N-Out that you can get, it started to trend, I think other people do it now, you can get your burgers protein style. So instead of buns, your buns are lettuce. Yeah. And it's delicious. And I did that for a while. I did protein style. And it's okay, man. I love it. I love it. It's there's nothing healthy about it. I don't know. It's just so wrong. And, it's wrapped in lettuce. And it seems like, okay, you're taking the bread out. You're making a health-conscious decision here. No, all you're doing is getting, get a triple protein style wrapped in lettuce. You're just getting, they might as well give you just 3 patties, hamburger, and just put them in your hand. That's just right. You could probably order that. Can I get the burger? Just put it in my hand. No buns. Just put the whole burger in my hands when I pull up. All right. Enough of that. Do a whole show on In-N-Out. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox on Twitter. You can do that. Hello to everybody all around the world. What is going on? There you go. What a great week on the show. Vivian was amazing on Monday night. Last night, Krista. The show with Krista last night, I thought that was one of the best shows we've done in a long time here. And there was a lot of reasons for that. But she's got it all figured out. Last night, and Vivian, right? I mean, just great shows this week. But last night was really special. And I'm feeling phone calls today and a couple of texts. And so if you can get to me through a phone number, then we're friends, right? If somebody texts me, we are friends. Okay, that's a secret set of digits. And so for me to get a phone call from somebody listening to the show, that is pretty cool, and that happened today. And I'm going to let you know. So you've got my phone number, and you can text me. That's pretty cool. That's the secret number. But I have a second phone. I have the secret phone. It's another iPhone 12. Looks the same. It's got a different case, so I can tell them apart. But anyway, so do you have the super secret phone number? Yeah, that's right. If you ever look at me closely, you'll see one phone out, and then you'll see me, there's a second phone. I wonder what that is. So think about that. All right. Where am I at? Let's get to the breaking news. This is crazy. As most of you know, I was born in Chicago, not exactly Chicago, just north of Chicago at the Great Lakes Naval Station. And then I did my formative teenage years in Panama. And then before Panama and after Panama, I was in Indianapolis. So Midwest, right? Okay. But Chicago is near and dear to my heart. All right. And then I got this news today. And for me, as a kid, I'm 5, I'm 6, I'm 7 years old, walking down to the beach of Lake Michigan, which we virtually lived on. It was just 100 yards from the house. Head down the hill, and you're there. There's Lake Michigan, which seems like an ocean, especially when you're that young, because not only you can't see the other side, but it goes in both directions. It's big. And I've seen a lot of crazy things down there. But then I got this news today. Listen to this. Up to 16-foot waves, 16 foot, are forecast now near Chicago. Right now, as this show is broadcasting. A strong storm system is forecasted to develop tonight and strengthen into tomorrow across the Midwest. Winds will begin to howl in parts of Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio. Winds gusting to 50 miles an hour could generate towering wave heights of 10 to 15 feet in the southwest parts of Lake Erie and Lake Huron. On the southwest shores of Lake Michigan, Chicago, 40-mile-per-hour gust near Chicago could generate waves as high as 16 feet through tomorrow morning. 16 feet. And it's happening right now. Has to do with the cold, coming in, the hot and cold water and the storm, everything. It is a perfect condition. 16-foot waves on the shores of Lake Michigan in Chicago. And and there's some spots. If you look at Lakeshore Drive, look at the side of Chicago, look at where the Navy Pier is, look at all of that. That stuff ain't ready for no 16-foot waves. No. Oh, man, I can't wait to see the video. It's going to be incredible. Everybody stay safe. Yesterday, the U.S. Space Force unveiled its new uniform prototypes, drawing comparisons to Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. The Space Force's service dress prototype, dress uniforms, was introduced at the Air Force Association's Air, Space, and Cyber Conference in Maryland yesterday. It includes a Navy coat with 6 buttons running diagonally up the right-hand side and gray pants. Now, somebody's going to start posting these pictures of the new uniforms on Twitter. You got to do that. Post it up. And post the pictures with comparisons to Captain Kirk and Battlestar Galactica, because I've seen the photo comparisons. And yes, there's no doubt that somebody has watched The Wrath of Khan too many times. But they look pretty cool. They look pretty cool. It's the Space Force. But, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Kaz. Look at the new uniforms. Look at these. Check out Kaz. Somebody posts the side-by-sides. When you look at the side-by-sides, space. When you look at the side by sides, it's spot on the money. There are no differences between the uniform. Dress uniforms. Okay, I popped this up in Twitter for everybody to see. Do the side by side. I think they look great. It's the collar, right? The lack of, the buttons going down the center, the lack of collar, the open collar showing the shirt underneath. It's identical to Wrath of Khan. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. I think they look great. I really, really do. You need that for UFO hunting. There you go. All right, NASA. NASA is seeking applicants like you for participation as a crew member during the first 1-year analog mission in a habitat to simulate life on a distant world, set to begin in the fall of 2022. This is going on now. In preparation for the real-life challenges of future missions on Mars, NASA will study how highly motivated individuals respond under the rigor of long-duration, ground-based simulation. The series of missions, known as Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, includes 3 1-year Mars surface simulations based at NASA's Johnson Space Center. Each mission, now this is where it gets funky. Each mission will consist of four crew members living and working in a 1,700 square foot module that is 3D printed by a company called Icon. They are calling the habitat the Mars Dune Alpha, the MDA. The habitat will simulate the challenges of a mission on Mars, including resource limitations, cutting them off of water, right? Food. Equipment failure. That's right. Communication delays. We need help, but nobody's listening. And other things that will totally stress everyone out. Seriously. Would you sign up for that? You got to have a college degree, or I think all 4 have to have 1,000 flight hours as a pilot. Is that a lot? I don't even know. Is that a lot as a pilot? 1,000 hours. That's 40 hours a week. 10 weeks would be 400 hours. So that's, right? So 20 weeks would be 800. So then add on another 10 weeks, another 20, 10. So I guess what is that? A year? Is that a year? If you do 20 to 40 hours a week? I guess that's not much. I don't know how they do that flight count, the hours up there. But there you go, and you can go apply right now over at nasa.gov. Space outfits are cool, but I was hoping they would go more of a Flying Elvis theme. You know what? You're absolutely right. That's what they should do. SpaceX kind of did that. They did a little Elvis Aloha from Hawaii, that vibe. And Muppet Pimpin'. Muppet Pimpin'. That's pretty cool. Oh, is this it? That's not the 3D habitat. If that's the 3D habitat, somebody sign me up. There's no way that's what that looks like on the inside. That's the outside. That's where the scientists that are studying them sit. There's no way that's on the inside. There's no way. Oh, wow, that's crazy. So is that right? Is this, Kaz, this is cool. Oh, this is the 3D printing of them building it. Oh, I get it. All right, my bad. Man, I'm such a doofus. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today. Scott Baio is 61. Joan Jett. Scott Baio. What was his name on Happy Days? Joni loves, what was his name? I can't remember. Joan Jett today is 63. Andrea Bocelli today is 63. Tony Basil. Tony Basil. Mickey. Remember that? How great of a song that was? The video. Everybody loved Tony Basil. Tony Basil today is 78. How old was she when she did that video? She was like, what, 45? I had no idea. David Coverdale, the legendary. David Coverdale is 72, Deep Purple White Snake. And what's your favorite David Coverdale song? Is it Deep Purple? Is it White Snake? Is it Here We Go Again? I know that's what you're thinking. Bullet Boys frontman Mark Torian today is 57. And our dead guy's birthday today is Roger Nichols, 1944 to 2011, died at the age of 66. Roger is considered by myself and most of the music industry to be one of the greatest engineers in modern history. There's no question about that. His long list of credits include Steely Dan, John Denver, The Beach Boys, Stevie Wonder, Frank Zappa, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Al Di Meola, Roseanne Cash, Roy Orbison, Gloria Estefan, Diana Ross, Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, Ricky Lee Jones, Kenny Loggins, Mark Knopfler, Eddie Murphy, Michael McDonald, and James Taylor. That is Roger Nichols. On February 11th, 2012, Roger was awarded a Special Merit Technical Grammy Award, his 8th Grammy overall. Roger was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer on May 29th, 2010. In early 2011, he was reported to be fighting for his life. He died on April 9th, 2011, at the age of 66. On this day in history, 1953, the first four-level or stack interchange in the world opens in Los Angeles, California. It's still there. At the intersection of the Harbor, Hollywood, Pasadena, and Santa Ana freeways. And I was thinking about this today. I didn't know there was a Pasadena freeway. I thought that was the 110. The Harbor is the 110. The Hollywood is the 101. The Santa Ana is the 5. Here's the deal. They went and started this project, the 110 freeway, that was going to go back and connect, because the original Pasadena freeway was windy. It was built for, it's treacherous to drive on today. It's still there. It was built for like Model Ts. I'm not kidding. In like 1915, whatever. It's narrow. The entrance ramps, they're like a drag strip. You just pull up and go. Pull up and go. They're short. Anyway, they never finished the other extension, the freeway extension. There were protests and tearing down the houses and all. Nobody wanted to do it. So the freeway never got built. So they've still got the old one there. A little bit of Southern California trivia for you. Fate or fact? All right. With casino distributions, right? Every Seminole Indian child born is a multimillionaire when they turn 18. And that is your fate or fact. There you go. All right. Tonight, very special guest right here, Timothy Alberini, wraps up this week of 3 first-time guests. It's going to be a great show tonight. Tomorrow night's another Fader night. Not just another Fader night. We're going to be taking calls on that long, of course. But we're gonna unwrap, and go back to this past weekend with the Conscious Life Expo. And I've got a lot of photos, and so does Brad Harris. So we're going to do some of that tomorrow night, too, as well. Well, I'm going to reveal all of the pics that I have. I'm going to do the same thing with Brad. But it's not going to take up the whole show because we're taking phone calls. It's Fader night. All right? All right. Now, I have 2 cups of River Moon coffee. Same pot. Exactly the same. Rivermoonwellness.com. Got a tweet. I think it came in this morning. Jimmy, my first My first cup has been brewed of the Game Changer blend, and I was so happy to see that. And to see somebody do a pour through, a drip over, pour over, that's a good way to make coffee. I don't know. It's really weird because I love a French press. There's something about a French press. It's got its own thing. Pour over. It's got its own thing going on. A good coffee maker, just a good drip coffee maker, has got its own thing going on. There are many ways to brew coffee, and every one has got its own distinct thing. So I don't lean in any area, but I do all three all the time. I do like the pour over, though. And look, I've got a drip. I drip. I do. I got a coffee machine. But when you do the pour over and the French press, now you're into ceremony. There's a whole process that you have to go through for that. And the still of the night, says Greta Anderson. I know, right? Still of the night is strong. Oh, I wanted to say this. Man, my whole rant. I'll save my rant for tomorrow night. Okay. I just spent some time in Northern California. Spent a few months up there. Way Northern California. And I was listening to a classic rock radio station up there called The River, right? And there was this guy on late night. Now, I'm telling you, in the sticks, there's no fast food restaurants. There's no IKEAs. We are in the remote part of the world. And but I'm listening to this cat on late night radio, and I thought, well, this is who represents, the country up here, and I get that. But the guy just got on my nerves. The music is cool, all right. I got a lot of White Snake, Still of the Night, and I dug that. But now I'm back in Southern California, and I escaped that guy. And I just thought, well, he's doing his thing. He's a DJ up in the woods, and okay, all right. He represents what's going on up there in Northern California. He's got his gig, fine. Just not my cup of tea. Come down here to Southern California, listening to The Quake, right? Rock and roll. It's the same guy in Southern California, which means this guy's broadcasting around the country late at night, which means you know who I'm talking about. And I just cannot. It ruined the radio station down here. I don't think this guy understands how bad he is. Oh, man. This is a national syndicated guy. I'm not going to say his name. His initials are MR, but I'm not going to say his name. Last name it's MR. Second initial is U in his last name. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to give away his name. First name might be Mark. And it just ruined. I can't believe it. And what radio has turned into, he fit what was going on in Northern California. He doesn't fit Southern California. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, right here, third night in a row, third night of first-time guests. Tonight, Timothy Alberino is here. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm now late. I'm going to get out of here. We'll be right back with Timothy Alberino. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from Rivermoon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all Rivermoon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Fadernauts, when you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This week on Fade to Black, 3 first-time guests. When you've done this many shows over this many years, 3 first-time guests in a week, it's exactly what I would like to do. It's amazing to go through this. Tonight, it is Timothy Alberino, and he joins us for the first time to discuss the film Extraordinary, The Revelations, and what his search for lost history has revealed. We're going to go through all of that tonight. He's a consummate explorer. His inquisitive mind and insatiable appetite for adventure have led him all over the planet in search of lost cities, lost civilizations, hidden treasures, and legendary creatures. He's also an avid researcher and published author whose scholarly pursuits are as daring as his expeditions. We're going to go through all of that tonight. And after years of study, Alberino has garnered an extensive knowledge base that enables him to dissertate with authority on a wide variety of esoteric topics. This is my kind of shows. And this includes, of course, alternative history, ancient mythologies, megalithic architecture, giants, Bigfoot, other cryptids, UFOs, alien abduction. Timothy, I gotta cut off your bio here, man. We don't have this much time tonight. we just don't. Transhumanism, right? Emerging technologies, occult conspiracy, and there's another part to all of this, and we'll get into some of this, and which is the religious side of everything, which involves all of us going back thousands of years. So we'll do a dance through all of these subjects. But before we do, you get the first-time guest disclaimer. Now, the next time you're on the show, though, Tim, you're not going to get it, okay? But you get it tonight, which is it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. There you go. See, not too stressful. You ready?
It's a good deal.
Yeah, good deal. Well, first off, let's actually start here. The film, Extraordinary, The Revelations, premiered here in Southern California in Pasadena. I went to the premiere. I was a little nervous, got through it, very happy by the end of the film. But the one thing for me about the film is you. You start the film, you have a very interesting take and spin on it. It's your seriousness in the way that you approached what you said, but that set the tone for the film, and I knew that we hit the ground running. I, like you, have been watching the film develop over the last year, and your intro to the film always stayed. And now the film has won Best Documentary by the Pasadena International Film Festival. It's got to make you feel pretty good that all of that years of hard work are starting to get recognized.
Well, congratulations to John and Jack and Lori and everybody else involved in that film. It was a very well done film. Doesn't surprise me that it won the award. And actually, this has been a project that, if memory serves me right, goes back 5 years.
Yes.
I remember being interviewed for this film a long time ago, it seems, and I've always kind of wondered what happened to that film, and it's really nice to see it finished and polished, and I think the public's going to enjoy this film a lot when it's available.
Yeah, and the pandemic happened, right? And
it did?
Yeah, exactly. And when I finally got the rough cuts, which, this is a while ago, and everything was clicking on all cylinders, we're looking good, and then the world just came apart. And it delayed everything, including this and the production staff that are involved in the film. Everything just stopped. Our world stopped. But thankfully, it got completed. And I think it allowed all of us to just go back and, which you never have. You've got extra time now. Let's go back and analyze, right? Let's take another look at the music. Let's take another look at the edits. More time for animation and graphics. And then, of course, more time for me to recut the narration because my first run sucked, right? So we ended up with something that was well thought through. And I think it really shows in this final cut, which you have just viewed.
It does, definitely. Very well done film.
Now, I want to start here with you. Getting around the world and having the opportunity to go to different sites and do the research firsthand is something that most people don't get a chance to do. It's your research and you know, your documentaries and books that allows us to be an armchair researcher, right? But you're out there doing it first on. How did this fascination for hard work into these different sites around the world and civilizations, how did that start for you?
Well, there's kind of two origin stories there. One is how I personally got started in all of this, and that's a kind of a different story. And then there's the question of how my work actually began in terms of producing the videos and writing the book I've written and everything like that. And that really began about, that part of my story began about, I would say, 7 years ago. When I moved to Bozeman, Montana, I moved to Montana to work with author Steve Quayle. Mm-hmm. And Steve and I together started Gen 6 Productions, and we decided to produce a documentary film series together called True Legends. And that's what kicked off the hands-on research in terms of actually traveling to these different sites for the purpose of researching. In those films, we were researching primarily giants, the question of whether giants actually existed and if there was evidence for them on Earth. But we also bled into other topics, including the UFO topic in those films. And so that was the beginning of the hands-on, in-the-field research. And that was about 7 years ago. But my interest in the topics and really my informal research, I maybe I would call it, happened a long time ago when I was, when I was living in the Amazon.
And how many years, when you say living in the Amazon, that's just daunting. What a crazy thought, right? How long did you live in the Amazon?
I lived in the Amazon basin of Peru for about 10 years. And at times I was actually living in the middle of nowhere in the jungle, with hunters and lumberjacks. And at other times I was living in jungle cities like Iquitos and Tarapoto, for those who are familiar with Peru, they'll recognize those cities, towns really.
And, okay, so those are towns. That's a little bit more, there may be an actual bed, right, to sleep in.
Yeah, it's domesticated Amazon life.
Yeah, domesticated Amazon life. But the undomesticated Amazon life, what was that like? Are we talking about a tent, a backpack?
It was some of the best experiences I've ever had. When I was 18 years old, I always say this because it's true. It's really the only way I can accurately explain it. I dropped out of / got kicked out of high school in my senior year. And by the time I was 19 years old, I was living in the Amazon basin of Peru. And so I had always had a fascination with the Amazon. As you read in my bio, I've had this, and it's the right word, insatiable desire for adventure when I was growing up. I mean, I grew up in a boring, sterile, prosaic suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. And, the most adventure I could get my hands on was riding my bike into metro parks, and that wasn't going to cut it for me. I wanted like Indiana Jones type adventure. And so that, among some other things, led me to the Amazon. And I had always had a fascination with the Amazon growing up. And so when I got there, it exceeded my expectations in terms of how much I enjoyed it. I absolutely loved it. See, I was a fish out of water in that prosaic suburb of Cleveland, but I was at home in the Amazon. I took to it immediately. I learned the language. I loved hanging out with the old timers and their canoes and, telling me the stories and eating the exotic foods and, and just living with the lumberjacks and hunters. And it was really, truly the formative years of my life, for sure.
Now, I did. Okay. So when you go from Cleveland, right, to the Amazon. At one point, you're on a plane, and you can remember Cleveland from hours before. Now you're in the Amazon, right? The next day, whatever it is. But the contrast is crazy. And I did the same thing, and I went from Indianapolis to the jungles of Panama in one day, right? And I'm sleeping that first night with these floor-to-ceiling screens, no windows, and I'm listening. Outside of my window is a jungle, and I'm listening, man. I'm listening. I heard things that first night that I've never heard before. There isn't
That's it. You described it perfectly. You described it perfectly. That is the experience. That is the sensation. And it's that first night when you're in the Amazon and you're just listening to the profusion of life around you, because we're used to cities, and we'll see some birds in the air, some dogs and cats, but that's about it, right? When you're in the Amazon, you're just ensconced in biological life
and death,
and half of it wants to eat you.
That's what I'm saying, life and death. Yes. And I didn't sleep that first night. I was like, that is the crazy. Something is getting eaten right now. And, oh my goodness. And wow. And the contrast, because I'm thinking to myself, yesterday I was at the mall, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And today it's this. And what I think everybody should go through that experience. I have said so many times, I'm sure you and I were talking about this earlier, the parallels in our lives are pretty funny. But I'm sure that you have thought or said to other, you know what? Leave the United States. You've never left. Go and see what is out there. There is another planet out there outside of this country. And once you do, well, you start to appreciate what goes on here a little bit more, because we don't appreciate what we do have. But get outside of the United States and go and experience it. I think everybody should do it, don't you?
I wholeheartedly agree, and that was my sentiment too. Was people have got to get out of their proverbial comfort zones and get into exotic environments that allow them to experience more of not just the natural environments, the different biomes around the earth, but also the different cultures. It's just it matures you, I think, in many ways. And I wanted, I wanted to try and get my friends to come down, and some of them did at different points. But you find out pretty quickly that when it comes to the Amazon, I'm sure it's the same in Africa and India and different areas of the earth, which are very exotic and are for some people wonderful experiences, but for a lot of people they're very bad experiences. You take certain people and you put them in the Amazon, and you made a big mistake doing that, because not everybody can handle the savage sort of in your face environment that the Amazon is. The threat that it poses on one hand. I've had malaria 5 times and yellow fever once. In a few of those times, I've had malaria deep in the Amazon, and yellow fever. Fortunately, I wasn't deep in the Amazon. I was in Tarapoto, and my neighbors found me and gave me some medicine. So there's good. There's it's not like just a wonderland. A lot of people there's a lot of things that are really amazing about especially getting into third world countries where it's exotic, like I said, like the Amazon, Africa, India. There's a lot of amazing things, but then there's a lot of hardship too that hit you in the face that you've never experienced before. Even things that are as simple as there's no running water in a lot of places, and you have flush toilets with buckets of water, and that's a culture shock to people that a lot of people find difficult to deal with.
Yeah, we all go through that once you go into a third world environment and you see it for the first time, like you did and like I did. I remember looking around and I'm seeing something very, very crazy. I saw a line of moms with their children on their hip, a line of like 50 people to get into this shower. Now, it wasn't a shower. It was a pipe coming out of the ground with a box around it in an open area. And and I'm like, what is, and so I look around at everybody else. Nobody's looking, right? Because they've seen it already. I'm going through my shock. Right? I'm just like, whoa. And I'm just going to leave that right there. But once you encounter that, right, a bucket of water to flush a toilet, no running water, no electricity, until you see it for the first time, it's something that you won't understand, the emotions that you go through. I certainly did. Now, okay, let's before we get to this first break, I want to set the tone for a couple of things. We're going to, of course, discuss the film and different sites around the world, but your comments and views on ufology, UFOs, ETs, and visitation are pretty profound. But you told me, and I stopped you, so I don't know the full story. But before you went to the Amazon, you're in Cleveland, and you had a UFO sighting. And from what you started with, it was a pretty incredible sighting. Can you tell me about what happened?
Yeah, actually, it was when I came back from living in the Amazon.
Oh, okay.
I came back with my family, and we went back to Cleveland, and we were living in Cleveland for a couple of years. And it was during that time that I had this encounter. I was with my brother-in-law. And here's the interesting thing. I got to preface this because this is what makes it really interesting, is that my brother-in-law and I would often work out in his basement. He had some free weights in his basement. And so he and I would lift weights in his basement, and we would have these really great discussions. And we were both very interested in UFOs. And I was at that time already very steeped in ufology and kind of becoming a ufologist myself. And he was interested in the topic. So we were always talking about UFOs, especially as it related to the kinds of technologies that maybe we may have procured or derived from crash retrievals.
Sure.
Obviously, I was familiar with the Philip Corso, Colonel Corso's story, and Bob Lazar, and all the famous incidents, and he was as well. And we had watched documentaries together. We were kind of both, as I said, very interested in the topic. And so I have to preface it with that, because that was actually the topic of conversation the day this happened, and had been a topic of conversation for the last 6 months that we were working out together. And so in the course of lifting in his basement, he said, "Hey, let's go over to the GNC store, the supplement store, and get some creatine or whatever it was." And so we just sort of quit and jumped in my car and headed for the suburb of Brook Park. It was 15 minutes outside of Cleveland. It's where I grew up, Brook Park. And long story short, we were approaching the Brook 8 shopping complex, the Brook 8 shopping strip mall. You can look this up online and see it. And it's a strip mall, so it's got a big parking lot out in front. And this was a very, very frigid night. So it was sometime in February. It was about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, sometime in February. And it was extremely windy. So it was really windy and really cold. And it's about 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, somewhere around there. And as we're approaching the strip mall, as we're approaching the parking lot, we noticed that there was this vehicle hovering above the corner store, the store on the corner, and it was only about, I would say, 20 to 30 feet above the store. So it was pretty low over the store. And it was so cold and windy outside. Nobody was outside like gaping at it. Probably the people in the cars were, but nobody was like standing around. It was so cold and windy. And the first thing that we thought was, this is a helicopter. That's the first thing we thought. It had very bright lights on it. This is a helicopter. And so we just sort of are looking at it thinking, that's interesting. The National Guard, which was nearby, must be running a drill. That's what we thought. And we thought, we're saying this to each other in the cars. We're approaching. It looks like maybe like a Chinook. It was about that big, like a troop carrier or a Black Hawk. It was a big helicopter.
Right.
That's what we thought. All right. So we're approaching. I drive into the parking lot. There's nobody in this parking lot. It's empty. I drive into this big parking lot, and I just hit the brake and throw the gear into park. Because now we're close enough to this craft to see this is not a helicopter. And by the way, we rolled our windows down when we thought it was a helicopter, because we're listening for the telltale sound of the blades whipping through the air. And so our first clue was there's no sound. There's no sound of a helicopter. Okay, that's odd. So when I get into the parking lot, we got a close view of this craft. I'm now sitting there in park, and we now know this is not a helicopter. No, we don't know what it is because the lights are sort of covering the craft itself, the body of the craft. We can see the shadow of a craft, but there's bright lights, so we can't really see what it is. But we know it's not a helicopter at this point. And this thing, it doesn't just take off or something. No, instead, it glides effortlessly from its position over this store, and it comes right over my car. Like directly over my car. And it's a little bit, it's above us and in front of us so that we can look directly out the windshield, like straight up out the windshield and see it right above us. So it's kind of in front of us a little bit. And it begins to descend. So it comes over the car and now it's descending. And keep in mind, the topic of our conversation, me and my brother-in-law, that very day.
Right.
And so this craft is now descending over the car, and now we can see it. Now we see the fuselage of this craft. And it was a delta-shaped craft. It was a diamond-shaped craft, in that it didn't have sharp edges. It had rounded edges. So it was a sort of a diamond shape, but without the pointy ends. It was a rounded diamond shape. And it didn't have wings. It had like little stubs. And it had what appeared to be like body armor, stealth body armor. And if anybody is familiar with, I think it's the Nighthawk, is it called the Nighthawk F-117?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the Nighthawk F-117 stealth fighher.
So it had the triangle, scaly thing going on.
Yes, yeah, that angular body armor.
Right.
And the bomber has the same kind of body armor, and so it had that, but it wasn't just a little bit like the F-117. It was like much more. How can I describe it? It had a lot more of that angular sort of features to it, and it had what appeared to be a windshield, but it was black. And it descended about 40 feet above my car. So, I mean, I could hit this thing with a rock.
Right.
This isn't I'm not seeing some light in the sky.
Right.
This sucker's sitting right over my car. And our jaws are dropped. We're just gaping at this thing. We're in shock. We're in shock looking at this thing because we both instantly know what we're looking at. And it had one of the really interesting features of this craft is it had triangular lights, very bright white. I remember two. My brother-in-law recalls one. I don't remember if it was two or one, but it definitely had at least one triangle-shaped light and green and blue smaller lights around the fuselage. But here's the thing: there was no sound, and there was no propulsion system to speak of. There were no propellers. There was no exhaust. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And people have seen Harrier jets take off of, aircraft carriers or even in parking lots, and the amount of force, just the
noise.
Coming out
the noise.
Roll a car over, right?
Yeah,
that's how much air propulsion is necessary to lift a Harrier jet vertically, right? For it to take off vertically. This thing, there was nothing. And here's the really bizarre thing. Remember, I said it was windy. My car was rocking. It was one of those windy days.
Right.
My car, the gusts of wind were hitting my car, and it was sort of rocking there in the parking lot. This craft was completely and utterly unmoved. by the wind at all. It was absolutely still, and when it moved, it glided. There was like no acceleration like we're used to. It was very, very smooth. It glided, and it sat there, I would say, at least for a good minute, if not for 2 minutes. That's a long time to stare at something that's 40 feet above you.
Yeah, absolutely. Timothy, I got to take a break right here. We just blew past the commercial by 30 seconds. I apologize to the network. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Timothy Alberino. We're going to finish this story when we come back after this short break. Don't worry about that. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30daysfree on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network. KGRADB.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B blend for 15% off of your order today.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy.
I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We're also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers, and you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Timothy Alberino is with us. Some call him Tim. 3 first-time guests this week. 3 all featured in the new film Extraordinary, The Revelations. And I want to finish up, though, Tim, if we can, what this sighting for you was in Cleveland. How did it end? You said it lasted about 2 minutes.
Yeah, and so we're gaping at this thing, and we've probably been looking at it at least, probably about a minute by now. And I suddenly remembered that my brother-in-law had a smartphone. I didn't at the time. I had a flip phone, and so it occurred to me that we should try and take a picture or a video of this thing. And so his name was Tony. I said, "Tony, your phone. And he just sort of, I remember him shaking his head like he was waking up out of a dream. And he just sort of dazed for a second. And then he starts to frantically reach for his phone. And he pulls it out of his pocket. And as he's going to lift it up, he's trying to fidget and like get to his camera on his phone. As he's lifting it up, doing this, he drops it. And when he drops it, he bends down to pick it up. And as he bends down to pick it up, just at that precise moment, the craft lifts up. It goes up, just very, very smoothly, just lifts up into the air, probably another 50 feet, and turns on its axis, and then starts to move away. And we jumped out of the car. And the first thing that hit us when we jumped out of the car was the wind, which was just howling, right? So here's this dichotomy between this cold, howling wind and this craft moving off into the distance, absolutely unaffected by the wind, which I can't stress enough because that's impossible.
Right.
According to our understanding of physics. And it's moving off, and it just sort of, it went over the horizon. It wasn't super high up right now. It was still pretty low, and it went over the horizon. And when I say horizon, I mean the local horizon of houses, rooftops in front of us.
Right.
So it was still low, and that was what was really strange. It didn't shoot up into the sky or bolt off. It just slowly moved away and out of our view. And so we in processing that experience right after it happened, standing there by my car processing this experience, we both agreed that we don't know what it was, but it definitely, we both had and I don't know why, I can't tell you why, but we both had the distinct sensation that this craft was ours.
Right.
This was ours. There weren't grays inside of this thing.
Right.
It was either a drone operated craft or remote operated craft, or there was a human pilot inside of it. It just felt like military hardware to me, and I'm not saying it was ours in the sense that we created this technology. I think I was looking at, my brother-in-law and I were looking at we had witnessed reverse engineered technology. We were looking at a hybrid craft that was using the components that we understand from the crash retrievals, because we don't understand all the components from crash. I doubt that we understand, even today, understand all the components that we've been able to extract from crash retrievals. But I believe what we were looking at was a hybrid vehicle that was using conventional components and alien technology.
Now, there's one thing. There's one thing you left out. Physics do not apply to the winter wind in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Lake Erie, that wind coming off of Lake Erie, that's true. But you know what's really, so this gets even weirder, because remember, we're talking about this very kind of thing for weeks on end. And then we go over to Brook Park, to the strip mall, and there it is, seemingly waiting for us, right? I had I had the distinct sensation that this thing was waiting for me, that I was supposed to see it. And whether that's true or not, who can know? But what's really interesting is I scoured through UFO accounts and even talked to some of the experts, like Michael Schratt, for example. I had a conversation with Michael Schratt, and I was asking Michael, because I don't know if you know Michael Schratt, but he's an aerospace expert, military aerospace expert, and he's like seen every kind of craft that anybody's ever reported. I mean, he's documented it, and he'd never heard of this. And I couldn't find a replicate story, a story that was reminiscent of what I saw in terms of the description of the craft. There's all kinds of different kinds of craft, configurations of craft that people see out there, but I could never find one that was like this, except until, I should say, when I was writing my book Birthright, which I published last year. I'm writing my book Birthright. And I'm writing the chapter in my book called The Alien Threat, The Alien Threat, where I specifically deal with the alien question in this chapter. And for some reason, I happen to be reading as I'm writing this book, just my the reading, I'm always reading something, and I happen to be reading at this point the Hunt for the Skinwalker book by Colm Keller and George Knapp.
Right.
Which I hadn't read up until that point, and for some reason I was reading it at that time, and it wasn't even for research on the chapter or anything. I just happened to be reading it, and I came upon this. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs here from this book,
sure,
because it's directly relevant to my story here. I came upon this little story in the book, which recounts a description of a craft that was seen on Skinwalker Ranch by Tom Gorman, which is a pseudonym, that wasn't his real name, the former owner of Skinwalker Ranch. And it's this. He turned toward the ridge and his jaw slackened. Starkly outlined against the snow-covered ridge was an aircraft that seemed to have just appeared out of nowhere. It was about 30 or 40 feet long, and it reminded Gorman of a snub-nosed, smaller hybrid version of the F-117 and the B-2. But it was completely silent. There was no wind, and the stillness was uncanny. The outline of the object, less than 100 yards away, gave Tom a good view of its short, matte black wings, exactly what I saw, matte black.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely like a small version of the F-117 stealth fighter. The odd angled design seemed quite familiar, and that's referencing that angular body armor that I'm talking about.
Right.
And but Tom knew that the F-17 was extremely noisy. And then this is the final paragraph here. It hovered silently less than 100 yards away and only 15 or 20 feet off the ground. Tom held his breath. The object moved silently away from him without ever increasing its speed, just like with me, and then disappeared into the gloomy night beyond the ridge. Tom heaved a sigh of relief and awkwardly got to his knees in the snow. He looked back several times at the area near the ridge where he had last seen the silent black phantom. What was this advanced technology, he wondered? Who owned it? And what on earth was it doing there on a ranch in Utah?
The same question. Yeah, the same.
And not even just writing this chapter, mind you, not even just writing this chapter on aliens in my book, which not all the chapters deal with aliens. In fact, only this chapter does. Not only am I writing this chapter, I'm writing the account of what happened to me in Cleveland. When I read this in the Skinwalker book, I was in shock. I'm reading this thinking, oh my God, that's exactly what I saw. He described it exactly the way that we saw it. So there you have it. What I saw in Cleveland, Ohio, about 8 years ago, on a cold winter night in February, it was also seen on Skinwalker Ranch by the previous owner.
In the winter. And you were asking the same questions.
The same questions came to our mind as to his. Is this military technology? It has to be reverse engineered. It's not derived from conventional aircraft, or certainly from our understanding of physics. This is the result of reverse engineered crash retrieval components, reverse engineered technology.
Now, where is your mindset today with your research and the things that you have been doing, including this sighting in Cleveland, and the conversation that is going on today, not only throughout popular culture and the world, but our own government and the military and the Senate and this UAP, UFO disclosure thing that is now tangible? What do you think is ultimately going on?
Well, I'm going to use this word first, alarming. That's the word. That's what comes to mind. This is alarming. Why is it alarming? Because this weird, awkward, quote unquote, soft disclosure that we're experiencing right now is being forced. And that's what's alarming about it. It's not being forced. I don't believe it's being forced by a shadow government or anybody at the Pentagon. I think that the disclosure is being forced by the phenomenon itself. And what I mean by that is the phenomenon is becoming more hostile. And this is precisely why the military is reacting the way they are, because if you see how are they framing this disclosure? This is the important question that we need to be asking. How are they framing the disclosure? Because how they're framing this soft disclosure is going to tell us a lot about what's going on and why they're doing it. They're not coming out and just saying this is just mysterious and we don't understand it. It's a unexplained aerial phenomenon, UAP. They're not just framing it in those terms. The way that it's being framed, and watch carefully, you're going to see this. The way that the Nimitz incident and the other incidents that came out are being framed is in the context of a national security threat. That's the context. That's how this is being framed. And for the people who can parse the bureaucratic language that this disclosure is being wrapped in right now, it's very clear. The military is effectively admitting that what we're dealing with here is a national security threat, and that's why it's alarming. Because what's happening is the sightings and the UFO phenomenon, as I said, is becoming increasingly hostile. What do I mean? It's beginning to harass our fighter jets. These craft are not just flying in the distance anymore. There's harassment happening now. They're purposely hovering above our aircraft carriers. They're following our battleships. They're making their presence known in a way that they were not before. So this phenomenon has always been elusive before. We were chasing it. And now all of a sudden something's changed. And the government admitted this. If you look in the documentation that the government is releasing and in the press releases and all of that, you're going to see that they identify that something changed in the year 2014. And what changed is that the phenomenon is now becoming more hostile. And that is alarming. And so the disclosure is being forced on them because they're getting craft now hovering above their deep underground military installations purposely. Now, we've always known that the saucers and the different craft would hover above our missile silos, our nuclear missile silos. Like up here in Montana where I live, one of the most famous cases, and it deactivated the missile, and it caused a big uproar in the military. But they're becoming even more overt in their activity now, basically saying, we are here and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the message right now coming from whatever this phenomenon turns out to be. That's the message that's being telegraphed to our military. And because it's becoming more apparent because it's becoming more aggressive, it's impossible to keep quiet anymore. The phenomenon is forcing disclosure. It's not, in my opinion, it's not the government. It's not the shadow government, the deep state. It is the phenomenon itself that is forcing the disclosure. And I'm not saying that these entities are want our governments to come forth and disclose their presence to us. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're taking a more hostile posture. And that posture is what's forcing the government's hand, because there's too many airmen, there's too many guys in the Navy, there's too many lay people out there, pilots and other professionals who are having encounters with these craft now. Too many across the board. And everybody's got phones. Everybody's got cameras on their phones now. So it makes sense that the Pentagon would get in front of this in order to control the public's perception of a phenomenon that is increasingly becoming more apparent and will become completely apparent inevitably at some time in the future. So this is narrative control. And that's not to say that the narrative that this is a national security threat is false. It's not that they're trying to feed us misinformation. It's that they're trying to get in front of it so that they can roll out what they want to roll out to us, leak what they want to leak, and control the disclosure. And
try to control a narrative that right now appears to be completely out of their control.
Exactly. Now, and if there's one thing that the Pentagon doesn't like, it's not to have control over a circumstance that is in the public view. They're obsessed with controlling our perception of what they're doing and and not just our perception, not just the perception of American people. More importantly, the perception of other nations. Of how they are handling these things, because the other nations, it's widely known that the other nations look to us, look to not just our government. Let me say something if the audience doesn't know. The White House doesn't know anything about the UFO phenomenon. Maybe there's some individuals in there. They don't have the need to know. They're not in the loop. There's no reason that the generals who are in the know, and they're probably far and few between, are not going to brief the president of the United States, not Joe Biden, not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. They're not going to brief them, even if they ask for a briefing. They're not going to tell them what they know about this phenomenon. Why? Because these presidents are transitory. They come and go. Donald Trump was in for 4 years, and now we got Joe Biden. So why would they tell them? They don't have the need to know right now. They don't have the need to know. The information is highly compartmentalized, and probably the vast majority of the people at the Pentagon have no idea. You and I probably know 10 times more than most of the people working at the Pentagon about this phenomenon. Yeah, but then there's individuals in there who know 10 times more and 100 times more than we do, because they've touched the craft. They've seen them test fly. They've seen the test flights and so forth.
Right. And I certainly agree with that. You and I definitely. There are people in this community that know more than you and I. Right? You know what I mean? It's so impressive, the knowledge base of this community. I wanted to ask you this really quick before the break. Do you personally see this as a threat?
Yes. This is a clear and present danger, not just to us in America, but to the international community. And why do I say it's a clear and present danger? People say, well, what's the evidence? Do we have evidence that these guys are hostile or friendly? Well, first of all, let's define these guys. I don't know how many factions there are out there. I've heard all kinds of things. There's all kinds of mythos floating around. Mm-hmm. But we do know, without a shadow of a doubt, the Greys are real. Those guys are real. And those guys are responsible for a lot, I think, of the sightings and for all of the abductions. And it is in the abduction phenomenon, which that film primarily dealt with. It is in the abduction phenomenon that we can discern the nature of the entities and of their program. And we can at least begin to discern their methods and maybe start to discern their motives. Or I should say, we can discern their methods and maybe begin then to discern their motives. And all I can tell you is they're not good.
And there's another part to this, Timothy, that I've always found fascinating. As frightening as an encounter may be with Greys or other entities, most of the abductees would do it again, right? As frightening as their experience is, they would be okay with continued contact and to have it happen again.
Well, you're opening a can of worms here with me.
Yeah, well,
that we'll have to dive into on the other side of the break. But that all depends on. Okay, let's put it this way.
Sure.
The abduction research material is entirely dependent. The accuracy of it is entirely dependent on the quality of the person conducting the research. And there are a whole lot of people out there right now, and you know, especially over the last decade, who've sort of entered this arena and are coming to it with already conclusions drawn, or at least particular perspectives, and are creating a zeitgeist among quote unquote experiencers that I believe is misleading, because I will always revert back to who I consider to be the premier original fathers of abduction research, and really there's a handful, but there's 4 who I think whose work is unimpeachable, because they're all academically trained, all of them, very smart people, and it's Bud Hopkins, John Mack, David Jacobs, and Carla Turner.
Absolutely.
Those for me, that's like, if you're going to go, if there was in a university, if there was a doctorate class on the abduction phenomenon, those are the 4 people whose materials you would have to study. You'd have to study those 4 people, their material, their research, in order to begin to understand the nature of the phenomenon. And there's a lot of abduction research people and people who are familiar with abductions in general who have not done the homework, because it is scientific data that you're looking at that point. Not hearsay, not speculation. You are looking at scientific data at that point from scientifically inclined individuals, 3 of whom had doctorates from universities, and then Bud Hopkins, who was just a very brilliant guy, very, very brilliant, highly educated guy himself.
Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Timothy Alberino. We've got a lot to discuss. Now, when we come back, we're going to take a trip around the world. One of my favorite things. Let's get into some lost history. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More Timothy after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan. Ryan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Timothy Alberino joins us. 3 first-time guests this week. Timothy wrapping it up. Great conversation. And this is the thing. I can't wait for the next time you're on the show with us, Timothy. I can already tell it will be a spirited conversation. No doubt about it. Now, we've got 2 segments left. And I know that you're up there in Bozeman. We do have a little bit of reserve time I save for open lines at the end of the show. If we're stuck in it and you want to continue, we can go on into some overtime. So I'll talk you into that a little bit later. But I want to shift gears a little bit and get into the megalithic lost history part of this conversation, because I think everything is connected. And there's another thing. We've got a whole nother show of that we could do. You're in Bozeman. You're like in Bigfoot capital of the world too, as well, man. I can only imagine the opportunities that you have up there in Montana. I have a friend that just left Montana last week. He's been up there for a week or so doing some squatching. So we'll circle back to that.
There's a big Squatch community up here.
Huge Squatch community. You know, I just see, it's so easy to segue into Squatching, but I just spent a bunch of months up in Northern California. I just got back. And UFOs and things and lost history, That's not the conversation that goes on up there. Every gas station, everything has got Bigfoot T-shirts and Bigfoot hats and this and that, and it is their life. And I don't care who you meet, old, young, male, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got a Bigfoot story. Everybody. And UFOs, I remember I was specifically talking to this lady and her daughter about Bigfoot. And I said, well, what about UFOs? Nah. It was really fun. It was like, but they'll talk about Bigfoot. Okay. But megalithic sites, and, whether you can get into specifics about, Peru or Bolivia, of course, Giza or Stonehenge, Pumapunku, Gobekli Tepe, and others. There are so many sites around the world. But I look at those and I look at the cutting and the placement and the quarrying. I immediately have to go to, we're talking about a Stone Age culture, quite possibly, that shouldn't have had the tools or the means or the engineering to do this stuff. There must have been knowledge acquired from somewhere else. And I'm okay with that. But Orthodox academia doesn't want to explore alternative possibilities as to where this knowledge came from. And I have issues with that, because either you're Stone Age man digging in the dirt for seeds to feed your family, or you've got intelligence, right, that came from somewhere else. And do you have that same vibe when you go to these different ancient sites around the world?
Definitely. I don't think there's, in my mind, when let's focus on South America, for example. When you go to Sacsayhuaman outside of Cusco, when you visit Ollantaytambo, not far away, 45 minutes away or so, or 90 minutes away. When you go up to Machu Picchu and you look at the foundations of Machu Picchu, or when you go over to Pumapunku at the Tiwanaku complex in Bolivia, you get the same sense in all those sites, because you're looking at the same level of technological achievement, because that's what it is. It's nothing less than technological achievement. It's not just a bunch of it's not just brute force. You're not just looking at brute force. We can all understand brute force. If it was just a matter of brute force, it would still be impressive. But it's not. It's not just big blocks standing up next to each other. It's the precision with which they are fitted together. It's the technology incorporated into them, the anti-seismic technology, that these massive structures were built so precisely. They were built on a particular inclination in every case, so that they would withstand cataclysm, not just a little rumbling of the earth, massive earthquakes. And this is documented in the city of Cusco after the conquest by the Spanish in the mid-16th century. The Spanish built their cathedrals on top of the ruins of the Incan of the Inca palaces, for example, in the square, in the Plaza de Armas in Cusco. And they built their great cathedrals, which are still there today. But those cathedrals have been built many times over, rebuilt, I should say. Why? Because every time a big earthquake would rock the city, those constructions would crumble to the ground. And so would the inferior Inca constructions, by the way.
You're right about that. And to be very clear for this audience, what Timothy is referring to, you've got three distinct stages of construction there that you can see. They're layered on top of each other. And the original, the Inca, it's kind of funny. The Inca were trying to be as cool as what was previous, but it's not. And you can see the differences. But the original foundations, these stones, are ginormous. There's a whole...
Right. And the Inca actually, the Inca were emulating who they viewed as their divine progenitors. And who were the Inca? They were the children of the sun. They were the children of Viracocha. And they viewed themselves as the inheritors, the rightful inheritors of the works of their progenitors, the gods who were their fathers. And so doesn't it make sense that they would inherit and rebuild what they viewed as the habitation of the gods? Machu Picchu, for example. What was the name of Machu Picchu? It wasn't Machu Picchu. That's the name of the mountain. The name of Machu Picchu, the Quechua name, is Ijampu. What does that mean? The habitation or the abode or the repose of the gods. And so why would they call it that? Because of what they found there. They found the megalithic foundations there. And so what did the Incas say? The gods must have lived here naturally. And so what would they do as the children of the gods? They're going to rebuild and re-inhabit as the inheritors of the works of their divine progenitors. And this isn't just the Inca, by the way. This is universal. The Egyptians did the same in some cases. Now, let's not make too light of the accomplishments of the Inca. The Inca themselves were an extraordinary civilization. Extraordinary. They were the Romans of South America. They excelled in waterworks. They built amazing aqueducts, just like the Romans. They built amazing roads, just like the Romans. They were great road builders. They were masters of agriculture. The Inca were. And this is a legacy. They didn't invent these things. This was a legacy of knowledge that came down to them. And they were very good stonemasons. There are some cases in which the Inca, in their finest work, in my opinion, of course, archaeologists have a different opinion, but in my opinion, and the opinion of many other people, such as Graham Hancock and others, that the Inca, even in their finest stone masonry, it just is on a completely different scale to the megalithic Cyclopean that preceded them. And the megalithic Cyclopean walls, what I was saying about the point about the Spanish walls crumbling in the earthquake, guess what didn't fall down ever? Was the megalithic foundations of that city. Never fell. They were dismantled. The megalithic edifices, such as the walls of Sacsayhuaman, were dismantled to build the Catholic cathedrals, and the Inca used probably in the aftermath of the conquest would probably start dismantling that stuff to build their own homes, because obviously during the time of the Inca it would have been probably pain of death to go and take those blocks. So that's really, I think, the accurate picture. Just as you said, there's distinct building styles. There's distinct levels of achievement and ability that are crystal clear. When you walk around the city of Cusco and you look at those megalithic foundations, you have walls where on one side you have the temple of Inca Roca, for example, with those magnificent megalithic Cyclopean walls. Magnificent. And then on the other side you have Spanish Reconstruction, or you have Inca walls. And there's a distinct difference between Spanish Reconstruction and Inca. And it was the center of the empire. It was in Cusco. It was the primary. This was the center of religious and political life in Cusco, in the empire, in the Inca Empire. This is where they had their dead kings. The mummified dead kings were in these chambers inside of the Coricancha that they would parade around at certain times of the year, like during the winter solstice and so forth. They would literally parade these mummies around as if they were still living. That's where they were kept. So this is the religious and political epicenter of the empire. Andesite walls on a smaller scale than Sacsayhuaman, but still beautiful, precisely built, Cyclopean. But what most people don't know is that in the 1980s, a Spanish explorer and good friend of mine named Anselm P. Rambla did an excavation there. And I was there with Anselm several times in Coricancha. And he did an excavation at the Coricancha, and he went down under into the foundation of Coricancha. And you know what he discovered?
A tunnel.
He discovered diorite megalithic foundations.
Yes.
Megalithic foundations.
And this is in the
center.
center.
The temple sitting on top wasn't even the original temple.
That's right. And this is in the center of Cusco.
Yes.
It's right there.
The epicenter of the Inca Empire.
Now, what goes through your mind when you look at the walls of Cusco and you're looking at a stone that is, 20 feet tall, that is hundreds of tons, and we know logistically they came from, just drag. How is it possible to move stones that large from the quarry back to Cusco over those hills?
Well, let's first begin with this statement. It is not impossible for primitive people to move megalithic stones. How do we know that? Because they're still doing it to this day in certain parts of Indonesia and India. They still have festivals in parts of those countries where they actually move megaliths. And they do it just like the archaeologists say, with a lot of rope and a lot of guys pulling, and sleds, wooden sleds primarily. Now, I've seen pictures. They're moving some pretty big stones, probably in the, maybe 20 tons or something. I've never seen a picture of, or a video. You can see videos of this too, by the way, on YouTube. I've never seen a picture or a video of anybody moving a 200 to 300 ton stone. That's a whole different category. That's like moving 3 houses. That's not like moving just a big block. That's moving like you're talking three passenger airline jets full of passengers. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
And but obviously without wheels. And they're moving them from a quarry 20 miles away. First of all, they're cutting them out of the quarry. That's where the real mystery begins. They're cutting them out because it's one thing, as I said, to move uncut, just to move big stones and erect them. Primitive cultures can move big things. This is the brute force I'm talking about. Primitive cultures using brute force, manpower, can move big things and erect them. They can erect big stones. But when you see big stones being precisely cut out of hard stone, out of the sides of rock faces of mountains, precisely cut, quarried, and then brought on site, shaped, and then fit together so perfectly that you couldn't fit a blade of hair between the joints. Again, you're moving from brute force into technology at that point. Technological skill. There's a force in technological skill. And the walls of Sacsayhuaman display technological skill. Again, they have this inclination. They're anti-seismic. They were ingeniously constructed to be anti-seismic. Let alone, by the way, the different configurations of megaliths all over the earth that align perfectly with the solstices and the equinoxes and different constellations and celestial phenomena. Just the technology to make those calculations, to survey the land so precisely, but then to do it on a megalithic scale. We are out of the realm of brute force. We are squarely in the realm of advanced technological knowledge. Period. That's it. I mean, and there's no getting around that. And if you talk to the Quechua people and the Aymara people up near Puno, if you talk to these people and you ask them, who do your people believe built the walls of Sacsayhuaman, for example? Who built those walls? They're never going to tell you the Inca. They're not going to tell you the Inca built those walls. Not the ones who keep the traditions of their ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to tell you one of two things I've heard over and over and over. They might say, generally speaking, the ancestors. But if you dig in, well, who were the ancestors? They may say one of two things I've heard. A, the gods, or B, the progeny of the gods, who in many cases were giants. That's their legends. They were giants. If you ask the natives who built Pumapunku, the answer is unanimous. The giants built it. Giants built Pumapunku. Now, I'm not saying that that's the truth. It could be. I don't know. I'm just telling you what they would tell you. They're not going to tell you the Inca built this. No, their traditions, and remember, their ancestors were the contemporaries of the Inca, right? So if the Inca built it and they used these native tribes as slaves to do it, which they would have had to have a slave force to do this, then you would think that tradition would have been passed down through the generations. Oh, yeah, our forefathers were enslaved by the Inca, and they built those walls, and they told us stories about pulling the big stones, and right? That's not what they say. That's not what they say. Pumapunku, for example, Tiwanaku, they say, how was that built? It was built by giants. And also, it was built using the using the agency of sound. Trumpets were blasted, and the stones floated through the air. So this is what you get from the actual native people who still maintain, who have a very strong connection to their past in a way that none of us do anymore. Not even, I think, the Native Americans in our country have as strong of a link to their past as some of these people in Peru, because a lot of these people, Quechua people, for example, they don't speak Spanish. They only speak Quechua.
Now, Cusco and Peru and Bolivia, as amazing as it is, we can formulate a linear timeline as to dating and going back 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Pretty incredible. But when you go over to Pumapunku and you go to the celestial alignments there, we're pushing the dates back now 15,000 years.
According to Arthur Poznansky.
Yes.
Now the archaeologists will scoff at you if you said that.
You have no idea how much I've fought this with people that have letters in front and behind of their names. But it is what it is. Now, that's okay, and we can debate that. But when we swing over to the Giza Plateau and then head north up into Syria and Turkey, present-day Turkey, then the Armenian highlands, where we have Gobekli Tepe. You know what? I want to swing back to that because you brought up a really good point about tonnage. So we'll get over to Baalbek eventually. But you go to Gobekli Tepe, where the dating now is 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years older than Giza. Now we are in a whole nother situation where did this knowledge come from? Quarrying those stones at 12,000 BC, that is changing history right there, isn't it? We have to have a different discussion.
Definitely. And by the way, I've never been to Gobekli Tepe. That's on my list here in the near future. But going back to what I'm familiar with, let me tell you this that aligns precisely with what you're saying with Gobekli Tepe. At Sacsayhuaman, again, my colleague Anselm P. Ramla did an excavation at the walls of Sacsayhuaman. Did an excavation. He went down, and he found at the bottom of his excavation, he found where the walls were still continuing, by the way. You can still see the walls, the blocks piled up. He found pre-Inca and only pre-Inca artifacts. So there goes the Inca narrative. I mean, that's it. There goes the Inca narrative. You can't have a bunch of pre-Inca artifacts that were from cultures that were around only before the Inca, and then they're gone, being at the bottom of these constructions, and then call it Inca. It just doesn't work anymore. So it's like Graham Hancock often says, everything just keeps getting older, and it's true. It's true. Archaeologists and historians are continually having to revise and revisit their paradigms and enlarge and remodel their paradigms, which they don't like to do. And we all know why they don't like to do it, because these people, this is what they build their lives on. And if you spend your life being an archaeologist out in the field with one particular paradigm, you spent your whole life on it, you're not going to change it. You built your whole career, your reputation, everything's built on this particular view. You're not going to change it, and why should you? Why should you rock the boat? You got your tenure, you're a tenured professor at a university, and you've got your comfortable paycheck, and you're going to get your retirement. Why would you rock the boat? And you're just going to get the disdain of your colleagues rather than the praise. There are very few people who would be willing, even in the face of the kind of evidence I just mentioned, to rock that boat. And Gobekli Tepe is forcing the rethinking of that timeline, though, because it's unquestionable. Gobekli Tepe. It was because, and the reason why Gobekli Tepe is such an amazing archaeological find is because it was deliberately buried. It was deliberately buried. Whoever built it, buried it.
Saved it for us. Like preserved it.
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah, you're right. I think so too. And if we go back to your point, Robert Schock, John Anthony West have both been on the show many times. I just had Robert on last month. But if you go back to 1992 in San Diego with the National Convention of Geologists that they do every year. So they're down there and they're presenting their evidence of the Sphinx. And, of course, the famous press conference and the arguments that started where they were saying, academia was saying, look, give us evidence of any archaeological site that predates Giza at 3000 BC. We'll have a conversation. But right now that doesn't exist. Therefore, you are wrong. Well, 3 years later, Gobekli Tepe gets discovered. And you would have thought that, now that's 7,000 years, right, Timothy? 7,000 years, not 700 years.
Yeah.
7,000 years predating Giza, the conversation still hasn't changed, right? And you would think that that was the one point where, okay, there's a possibility with the Sphinx. There were technically advanced civilizations predating Giza that had this knowledge. It still wasn't enough to tip the scales. And now they're calling it 12 Tepe. They found 11 additional sites.
Yeah. It's an immense site, yeah. It really is forcing their hand to revisit their paradigms, and thank goodness for that.
If Gobekli Tepe exists, which it does, of course, think about how many other Gobekli Tepes are around the world, not just in, modern day Turkey, but there is stuff under the dirt, under the sand,
under the ocean.
Yeah, under the ocean around this planet that will suggest that things didn't start in ancient Sumer at 3000 BC.
No, because a lot of this stuff, I believe, and I concur with a lot of my colleagues out there, I believe that what we're looking at is a civilization that built a lot of these megalithic monuments and then was eviscerated in a global cataclysm.
Probably a few times.
The end of the Ice Age.
Yeah, well, that was the last one, right? Where the planet is 4.5 billion years old. And how many times did we go through this cycle of rebuilding, and I think the evidence is right there. Let's take our break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Timothy Alberino. What a great conversation. You knew this was going right there. We'll pick up where we're leaving off when we come back. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit unitedgoldgroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest, first time here, not the last for sure, Timothy Alberino. And this is the thing. When we go around the world, Timothy, and we look at these ancient sites and the possibility of knowledge, and then we go to the texts, and it could be religious. It could be the Old Testament. It could be Sumerian tablets. It could be something from China. It seems that every culture expressed knowledge from the stars, angels, gods, and this being handed down. When we review that and study it, as we do every single day, are they trying to tell us something that we are starting to understand now, that this may be extraterrestrial?
Well, let's be a little bit more specific about it. Every major ancient culture around the world has some kind of mythology related to what is generally understood as the Golden Age. The ancient Egyptians called it Zep Tepi, the first time. And it was in this golden age that the gods dwelt among men. And not only did they share their knowledge with them, they copulated with their women. They had sexual intercourse with their women, and they procreated hybrid offspring. And this is a narrative of almost every major ancient culture, civilization on Earth. And so it's not just that they believed in, beings from other places coming to Earth. It's much more intimate than that. These beings came in and procreated with our females. And their offspring were the great men of old. The Bible calls them the Giborim, the men of renown. And they're known as the great heroes in all the mythology, the Titans and so forth. and they were the hybrid offspring of the gods. And of course, the most florid mythology related to this is the Greek mythology, the Greco-Roman mythology, in which you have, all kinds of different creatures that were the offspring of the gods, the cyclopes and the giants and the different beings, Hercules, for example, these mighty men of renown from the old world. And what was the old world to the ancients? Again, almost uniformly across the globe. What was the old world? We think of the old world, when we say the old world, we think of, Victorian England or something like that. No, the old world to the ancients was the world before the cataclysm. And that cataclysm takes different forms. Different cultures focus on different cataclysmic forces. Some talk about fire raining down from heaven. Some talk about earthquakes. The majority talk about flood, a great flood. Many of them say a flood that covered all the world. You were referencing the Sumerians who certainly say that. And the reason why I think that the cataclysm, and I think there's a specific cataclysm they're remembering, even though I think you're right in saying that there's probably been lots of cataclysms, but there's a specific cataclysm that's being referenced here. The last one, the last big one that wiped out the civilization that was previously inhabiting the earth, a technologically advanced civilization. Now, when I say technologically advanced, I don't necessarily mean a civilization that had the same kind of superfluous technology that we have, like iPhones and video games and, cars. I don't expect to find skyscrapers and Lamborghinis and laptops in the antediluvian world, but certainly a very profound understanding of astronomy, certainly a profound understanding of geology,
mathematics,
a profound ability to navigate,
yes,
and to survey and to make maps and to build megalithic structures that could withstand earthquakes. And the variety of the natural forces involved in the cataclysm makes sense, because let's say, for example, that a comet struck the earth at the end of the last ice age, some 12,000 years ago. Well, that impact would have, especially if it hit the ice sheets in either the northern or southern pole, would have caused all the things that everybody reports: earthquakes, volcanic explosions. It would have caused superheating of the atmosphere, a rapid melting of the ice. It would have caused a global flood for sure, flooding on a global scale for sure. It would have caused all the things. The black rain that some of the native tribes talk about, the black soot rain fell from heaven. The sky was blackened out for a period of time. Well, it would have caused all those things. So it's not that one of those accounts is right and the others are wrong. It's more like they're all right collectively.
I remember one of my teachers, it was like 7th, 8th grade, talking about history. And he said this to me, Timothy, and I never forgot it. He said, where we are sitting right now, this is in Indianapolis, 12,000 years ago, above us was 2 miles of ice. Yeah. 2 miles, right? And so as a kid, you kind of look up and you're thinking what that means, right?
Well, here's what it means. What happened when that ice melted?
Floods.
Flood.
A lot of it.
Cataclysmic floods.
Water moving at miles per hour that we don't have a concept of.
Yeah, and hundreds of feet high tidal waves.
Hundreds of feet high.
Sweeping across the land. There's the flood myth. It's not a myth. It's not a myth. These ancient societies are recording a factual event. It was the last great cataclysm that rocked the earth and changed everything. And that's why we have, that's why we think that civilization began, with the ancient Sumerians or with the ancient Egyptians. No, that's not even what they say. It re-began. It was a re-beginning. It wasn't the beginning. It was the re-beginning. That's why they suddenly show up on the scene with apparently all this knowledge. Where'd it come from? There's a legacy behind them. And that legacy goes back into an antediluvian civilization that existed before the flood, that was annihilated, wiped out. Now, people can, argue about how sophisticated that civilization was, but like I said, we can definitely infer a certain level of sophistication. My God, in order to understand and make those astronomical configurations, not just in the megaliths but in the mounds in America and Serpent Mound in Ohio, for example, the configurations that precisely line up with the solstices and equinoxes and so forth. What that involves is math. That involves math, a high degree of math. And it involves what we would call science, and many fields of science, at least a few: astronomy, math, the surveying, whatever science that would fall under, geology, geography, I should say. At least those three, right? Geography, math, and I forget the other one I said. But those are the sciences that are involved there. Those are the sciences, astronomy. Those are the sciences that are clearly involved. So we have to at least admit, I think it's painfully obvious that we're dealing with an advanced civilization, at least in those three fields.
I often wonder, and we're going to circle back to this, but I often wonder, I'm building a new house, right? And I go to the construction company and I go, okay, I want this foundation to be precisely within 1/10 of a degree to true north. They would look at me like I'd lost my mind.
Exactly.
Right? And
first they'd say, what is true north?
Right. And now we're talking about lasers and things and what they would have to do with modern technology to get this done and to pull it off. Could they do it to 1/10 of a degree? Well, you go back and you think about the foundations and the size of the pyramids, of the pyramid complex on the Giza Plateau, and what that truly involved. I think a construction company today, whatever it may be, maybe it's a skyscraper, this foundation needs to go true north, what they would have to undergo to do it with our knowledge today. Let's back this thing up 5,000 years, if it was 5,000 years ago. Back it up 5,000 years. What was involved? They knew how to get it done, and they did it on a scale that hasn't been replicated for the last 5,000 years.
Yeah, and why build with megaliths? Why? I mean, if you have you been to Sacsayhuaman in Cusco?
No, but I've been to other megalithic sites in Central America.
When you stand in front of megalithic constructions, you just stand there, and you asked me what was the first thing that went through my mind. I remember I just recalled that question you asked me. I don't think I answered. Here's the first thing that goes through my mind when I stand in front of these megaliths. Why?
It's not.
Why would you go through all the effort to build on this scale? Why?
It's not a defensive structure. They weren't fighting other. Right? It's not that. It's not a fort.
The Inca were in conflict with their neighbors, certainly. But we know the weapons that the Inca used. They used maces, stone, copper, maces, and bronze maces. And we know what their enemies used. Their enemies weren't even as advanced as they were. They were using just, the spears and the sometimes arrows and bows and arrows and the implements that you would expect, right? And so last time I was at Sacsayhuaman, I actually filmed some stuff there and I was talking about this. If you have an enemy, you're the Inca, right? You're the Inca engineers and you're building these walls and you're going through this tremendous effort to build these walls. That's taking up, tens and tens of thousands of your workforce that could be doing other things, right?
All of your resources.
And here they are building these walls. And according to the archaeologists, it took them, decades and decades to build. So it's not like you're building them for an immediate threat anyway, right? And so you're building up these walls, these massive megalithic walls that are only half the size of what they used to be, by the way. So even today, they're 15 feet, 20 feet tall. They were like 30, 40 feet tall when they were originally constructed. Solid stone. The foundations are up to 260 to 300 tons, some of the stones. And so I'm picturing the Inca are fortified within these walls. What kind of enemy are they expecting to assault these walls? I mean, my God, Are they expecting giants to assault these walls? Dragons? What are they thinking about here? What are they thinking about? Because I'm picturing natives. And remember, the armies were not that big in those times. You're talking about maybe a few thousand natives rushing those walls with what? Stones? Spears? What are they? They didn't even have trebuchets. They didn't have trebuchets. What? So it's complete overkill. You don't have to do it for a defensive structure. No, and here's the reality. Here's the pragmatic problem that archaeologists have. Nobody would do that. Nobody would do it. You have limited resources. You have limited time. You are not going to do that if you don't have to, or if there isn't a higher purpose for it. And you don't have to if your enemies are other native tribes.
So it must have been easy.
It must have been relatively easy.
Easy.
That's right. It must have been relatively easy for the people who built it.
That's the only way to, and it's like Occam's razor right here. Let's just get to the simplest idea. It was just easy. This wasn't difficult. Yep. I can't imagine, back to your point, if you're the leader of this village, right? You're the leader. You go, okay, check this out. Every man, woman, and child for the next 50 years is going to build a 50-foot wall. No other jobs, right? That's it.
Exactly.
So how are you going to convince everybody that this is no, it was easy.
Yeah. And let me say that I'm convinced that the megaliths in Peru and Bolivia, the big ones, are exceedingly ancient, 12,000 years, 10 to 12,000 years old, ancient, years ago. Now, I have never been to Egypt. I haven't gone to Egypt yet. I don't know how old the pyramids are. Now, there's different thoughts. Some people think they're very old. They're in that time frame as well. Based on the work of Schock and his colleagues, I do believe that the Sphinx is as old as they say, based on the weathering and based on its alignment. I think that the Sphinx is 10 to 12,000 years old, just like the walls at Sacsayhuaman, just like Pumapunku. Now, the pyramid itself, I don't know. I don't know. It's still a massive undertaking. But there's one thing that we have to remember. If there was one thing that was much more compelling to the ancients than armies, than enemies, because they can build simpler fortifications, right, to stop enemies. There's one driving factor that could be involved here in some of this. Let's say that the Great Pyramid was built in the time frame that they said it was. What was it, 2000 something BC, 2500 or whatever it is in there, in the 3rd century BC. So if it was built, what would be the factor, the driving factor? It's not armies. It's not a defensive mechanism. I think the only factor that would make sense is something to do with the death ritual, because death was the perennial preoccupation of our ancestors, and especially the pharaohs, who believed that they were going to go and join the gods. So building a big machine in their minds, a spiritual machine that would convey them to the netherworld, and their progeny henceforth, that might be a motivating thing. I could see that, but even that is kind of a stretch to me. But I can see it. It's certainly in play, but I don't think there's any question. Again, based on the good work done on the Sphinx, the weathering, the geological evidence, that the Sphinx is 10 to 12,000 years old. So then what does that mean? So let's say that that's true. The Sphinx is 10 to 12,000 years old. And let's say the Great Pyramid, let's give it to the archaeologists. The Great Pyramid was built in the 3rd century BC. What does that mean? Because the Great Pyramid is a monumental achievement that it would be very difficult to reproduce today, representing high technology. That means then that there was a legacy of information, that there's information that was passed down, that is derived, not invented by them, but that was inherited by them, that came from somebody else. And this is where we get into the realm of a lost civilization from the pre-flood age, from the antediluvian age, before the Cataclysm.
Everything is taught. Everything is taught, right? There's very rare moments where somebody just wakes up and goes, okay, this is how we're going to quarry stone. It doesn't happen that way. And to another point, getting off of the megalithic side of things, but if we really look at the changes of this planet, it happened with the domestication of wheat. And if we look at that seminal moment in civilization, that is the point where we went from one stage to the next. But during that period, allegedly, we are talking about hardcore Stone-aged man. This is before everything.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Well, first of all, here's my mentality. I don't disregard archaeologists and people who spend their lives in these fields. These are in most cases very smart, very intelligent people. Now they are hamstrung to an ideology right out of the gates, and they can't gainsay that narrative, or they won't have their jobs. They simply won't be hired to do the things they do. Okay, we all know that. Okay, but I have a lot of confidence in what archaeologists can say about civilization going back 6,000 years, let's say. I think we know a good deal about civilizations going back about 6,000. But I think beyond that point, I think we're clueless, honestly. I think we're clueless. So when we talk about, when our agricultural began, or when this began, or when writing began, or when this happened and that happened, and I just feel like we are just groping in the dark. And you can't grope in the dark. That can't be the public perception of history. So it's the archaeologist and the historian's job to form that darkness, to form the chaos, to make it discernible and to give it definition, so that so that they can give the appearance that we know what's going on, we know what happened, because we fear the unknown. It's scary to us when we don't understand something in the past, when we can't explain things. It's mysterious, and it causes trepidation and confusion. And so we have this instinct to want to tidy everything up and make this nice timeline and said, this is when writing began. This is when our agriculture began. But I think, honestly, we are at best groping in the dark when we get beyond 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. I really do. And now there's some dispute of radiocarbon dating. I think it's accurate up to 6,000 years, and I think then it become much less reliable after that, and that's a whole nother discussion. And so I think that we're building houses on sand, especially archaeologists and historians who deny the cataclysm, outright deny it, because it's a doctrine. It's the geologic doctrine of uniformitarianism that denies that cataclysmic events have radically changed the earth. And so it's built on almost a religious doctrine, and they can't go against their religion. It's a religion. It's this scientism rather than just scientific inquiry. And if you can't accept the cataclysm that all the ancients tell us about, how are you going to get the deep past right? How are you going to get that right?
You can't. It's impossible. And there's another part to this too as well. And you're absolutely right. The work of archaeologists and anthropologists and that dive into deep history, I respect it. It's an amazing thing. I wish I had that discipline. But what they are in denial about, what they will, where they go back to, well, you're not giving enough credit to Stone Age man. It just happened. Well, no, because if you are out, you're being chased down by lions and tigers and bears and think you're going to die. You need to constantly think about survival, surviving the night, getting to the next day.
Exactly. Yeah.
There wasn't somebody out, the guy that is out there thinking about domesticating wheat or astrology and astronomy and looking to the stars and mathematics. They're going to die.
He's poking at a saber-toothed tiger with a spear.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, he's not like doing some scholarly, investigation or work. He's out there trying to capture dinner.
That's the way that it had to be. So that knowledge of quarrying or mathematics, geometry, language, writing, this is something that had to have been passed down. It didn't just happen at 3100 BC, and then at 3000 BC, everything just was magical.
No way. And it had to be passed down, furthermore, from a civilization that could accommodate scholars and astronomers, a civilization that could accommodate mathematicians and professors and doctors and so forth. And it's just only civilization can accommodate those professions. Otherwise, everybody else is out trying to get dinner.
Now, what do we do? Now we do have to stay into overtime because I have a whole nother subject that we have to cover. But what do we do with this, though? Because now we're dealing with the two capital A's. Atlantis or aliens, right? It's like these two untouchable subjects with academia, but it's something is behind all of this into the deep past. How do we accomplish this? Do you go with one of those two big A's?
Well, people who know me in my work will know that I come from a biblical worldview, which I think this paradigm accommodates all of this, by the way. These are not extra biblical ideas. These are ideas, concepts that are comfortably accommodated within the biblical paradigm. And so if you ask me, hey, you subscribe to the biblical narrative, do you believe in aliens, extraterrestrials? My answer would be absolutely unequivocally yes, because the biblical narrative presumes the existence of extraterrestrials, presumes it right in the narrative. And so coming from that background, if you ask me, was there extraterrestrial influence in human civilization? My answer, again, as a person who subscribes to the biblical narrative, would be yes, absolutely there was. And so that would be my answer with the alien question. And then as it pertains to Atlantis, I don't know if Atlantis existed as a city. It was what Plato was saying was that a description of an actual city, or was it esoteric? Was he giving us a zipped folder that has to be unpacked to extract the information? Because they did that all the time. I mean, that's what they did. The Pythagoreans and so forth. This was what they did. They never told you plainly what they're trying to tell you. They told you in symbolism, and they told you and so forth and so on. So I don't know, but I do believe that Atlantis, at the very least, it gives us a picture of the antediluvian world. That it is in fact symbolic of the antediluvian world in general. Because again, remember what I said, that all of these ancient civilizations, they have a mythos of the golden age. This is what Atlantis encapsulates. Atlantis, who founded Atlantis according to Plato? Poseidon founded Atlantis. And what did Poseidon do? He took a human wife. He married a human woman. So here's the gods dwelling among men.
Right.
He marries a human woman. He takes her to wife. He copulates with her. She conceives and gives birth to 10 twin sons who would become the rulers of not just Atlantis, the Atlantean Empire. And these are the sons of Poseidon, Atlas being the chief among them. And there's reason to believe, by the way, we don't have to get into this, but there's other ancient documents that suggest that those were giants. Those kings were giants, which would have fit into the narrative of the Greeks, where many of the offspring of the gods were giants. And so you have the encapsulation of the antediluvian world. You have the gods taking human women as wives, copulating with them, procreating through them, hybrid offspring that became the demigods and the rulers over their empires. And then you have this diffusion of advanced knowledge and technology. That's an encapsulation of the antediluvian age, of this lost civilization that we're talking about.
And clearly a very similar story to the text at Edfu, which, go back 10,000 years, and we're talking about demigods and the establishment. Yep. It's a very similar story. Let's take our break.
And let me say real quick that I do not believe that Poseidon was an actual character. I think that's a mythological archetype.
Well, you have to be able to tell the story to the masses, and that's how you get it done. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Timothy Alberino. Now, when we come back, we're going to go into overtime. But when we come back, we're going to talk about us. Homo sapien sapien. That's right. We're going to do that when we come back. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Overtime is next. Stay with us.
You are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B blend for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30daysfree on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to Jimmy Church
lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRAradio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Timothy Alberino, heading straight into overtime. I think everybody expected this tonight. There's no way this conversation was about to stop. And Timothy, when we get into overtime, I like to loosen up a little bit. But this is a serious subject for me, which is us, Homo sapien sapien. And when we go back to some of the mythology, and then, the Sumerian text certainly says a lot. But if we just go with the hard sciences, we just appeared here 200,000 years ago. And I think we can all agree that there's a lot of intelligent species on this planet, but I don't see dolphins with the internet, right? The evolution has not continued. We are singular on this planet, but we just appeared. We just appeared out of nowhere 200,000 years ago. What's your take on that? How did that happen? And we sort of danced on this earlier, but we blew right past it. How did we just appear here?
Well, I personally don't subscribe to the theory of evolution. I think it's a theory in crisis, as many people have described it. And I think there's a better explanation, frankly. And that explanation, again, I'm going to cite my own background, which is the biblical narrative, I think, is, in fact, the true narrative. And not just because I'm cherry picking it out of all of the other ancient narratives, but because out of all these other ancient narratives, there's only one narrative that is self-validating. Only one. And when I say self-validating, a collection of manuscripts that do something unique, that validate their own truth, and that is through the agency of prophecy. So if you have a manuscript that can accurately predict things about the future, and I'm not talking just about our future, but about the future of the ancients, for example, the kingdoms that were about to arise and the empires and so forth, and different events that would have been impossible for these guys to know. And when I say these guys, I mean the writers of these ancient Hebrew manuscripts. If they're making these accurate predictions, then they're doing something that none of these other texts, not the Sumerian tablets, not the Vedas, not any of these other ancient manuscripts can do and have done, and that is be self-validating. And the late Chuck Missler, who was a Bible scholar, very intriguing guy, used to say that the biblical narrative is in fact an extraterrestrial message from outside of time to mankind, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. That when I cite the biblical text, when I say that I believe in the biblical narrative, what I'm telling you is that I believe that specifically the biblical narrative, the Old and New Testament of what we call the Bible, is an extraterrestrial message to mankind from outside of time, from man's maker, and that makes it the most important message that humanity has ever received. And that's my perspective, and that's my background, and that's my belief system. And so, if you ask me how we got here, then I would say very simply that we were created to be here, that we were created to inhabit the earth, and we were created to do so for a very specific purpose, and so that's how I believe we got here. So I don't subscribe to evolution, and I do understand the narrative of evolution and so forth, but. So I think, but having said that, what's called a young Earth creationist. I don't believe that the Earth was created 6,000 years ago. I agree with what you said. I think the Earth is very, 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 very old, and possibly was inhabited before we showed up, and that the universe itself is exceedingly, unfathomably old, and that we are not the only inhabitants of the universe. And as I said before the break, that the biblical narrative presumes the existence of extraterrestrials, and the Bible designates them, very ambiguous designation, angels. It's a very ambiguous, purposely ambiguous designation, but angels are non-human entities that pre-existed mankind, that are not from the earth. They are therefore extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial means it's a being whose provenance is not planet Earth. And that is, again, presumed within the biblical narrative. So I think that we would find a lot of agreement, and probably surprising to maybe some of your audience, that a guy like me, who's a Christian, could agree with the statement that extraterrestrials influenced mankind.
Now,
I have been influencing mankind from the beginning. That's an affirmative. That's an affirmative not only from me personally. I think it's affirmed in the biblical context.
Now, I have seen a lot of your presentations over the years, and you have been on many shows with different. I'm going to just say it in these terms, with hosts that are religious scholars, right? They understand the Bible and have a strong Christian and religious foundation. And then when you are a part of that audience, how much of the audience is on board with you with these statements? Is this a movement?
In the Christian community, for example, how many people would accept the statement that I just made?
Yes.
Well, I think that a lot of people might at first take umbrage because it seems so foreign to their paradigm. But then once you do a little bit of thinking, you realize that what I'm saying is just simply I'm making a logical inference that is frankly it's unimpeachable. I mean, it is what it is. An extraterrestrial is a being whose provenance is not planet Earth, period. End of story. Angels are therefore, according to the scriptures, extraterrestrial. It's just a statement of truth. And so I think a lot of people, a lot of Christians might at first be shocked, and are at first shocked, but then I think once they realize that this is just a statement of fact, in fact, I believe that a lot of people tend to view the biblical narrative as being very narrow and not encompassing, for example, the UFO phenomenon. Quite contrary to that belief, the biblical narrative is exceedingly broad. In fact, I would say it's galactic, and there's nothing it doesn't encompass, and nothing that can't be explained within that context. So it's a functional worldview that answers questions, naturally answers questions. And so that's why I subscribe to it.
Now, what I find very interesting, I wanted to say this, L.A. Marzulli, who's also in the film, I remember, this is going back quite a few years, quite possibly 20, but I remember the first time I started listening to L.A., I had said to myself at that time, this is my guy, right? This is who I've been waiting for.
I was just on the phone with L.A. Marzulli before I jumped on the call with you. He's a good friend.
He is an amazing, amazing guy. And it really helped me navigate ufology and ancient history. I don't always agree with L.A., but you have to have an open mind, and he certainly does, and he allowed me to do that. But there was another thing that L.A., and I was speaking with you, allowed me to do. And that is, if you go into the Bible and read it, and I have, right? Okay. And insert E.T., right? Insert little gray, insert certain things into the story, and it starts to become crystal clear and make sense. I'm okay with that. I think that the Vatican right now is approaching this from that narrative as well, where they need to navigate this in a way with Catholics around the world and that have a religious foundation to introduce this idea, because something is happening right now and they do have to explain the universe and what may be going on.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Vatican intelligence, which their intelligence apparatus, which is called the entity by other intelligence apparatuses because it's so massive and pervasive, I wouldn't doubt that the entity at the Vatican knows more about UFOs than the Pentagon. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. But the Vatican is definitely scrambling right now. But they're see, and when people, so let's be clear, when I talk about extraterrestrials influencing mankind, first and foremost, I am not talking about the Greys. And that's one point. Another point is when I talk about extraterrestrials influencing mankind, I'm talking both good and bad. Okay, so it's not one or the other, it's both. And not the Greys. The Greys are a completely different conversation to me. I actually believe that the Greys showed up in the mid-1800s. I don't think they're ancient. I don't subscribe to the Greys having been around for a very long time, at least not engaged in the abduction program. That I think it's clear that this is a relatively modern phenomenon, the abduction program, definitely modern in its specificity. So, but that doesn't discount other entities, right, that aren't the Greys, that are not from the Earth, that have been around using technology comparable or even more advanced than what the Greys have. So let's just put it in these terms. Have there been ancient extraterrestrial beings interacting with mankind and traversing our skies in advanced aerospace craft for millennia? Yes. I say yes, and I say that the biblical narrative answers that in the affirmative as well.
Is there, when we go into the modern context of contactees and what they have seen in a variety of different ways, but the description of light beings with a message, and you just go right to angels, if we don't have another word to use right now, but angels being beings of light, and with a message and communications, that would be the way from somebody, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, a way to describe to the masses what they were seeing without freaking out the entire village.
Sure, but actually, the angels it's a difficult word because it's, without getting into the weeds on it, it's just a descriptor of occupation. It's not. It doesn't tell you anything about the race of the entities that it's describing. It just describes, in fact, in the Bible, not just heavenly beings are called angels. In some cases, humans are called angels when they're dispatched as emissaries, when they're functioning as messengers. So I wrote a book called Birthright, and I go through all of this in the book. And I actually, because the word angel is so ambiguous and so nondescript, it doesn't inform us about the nature of these beings. I actually refer to them. I give them my own designation in the book. I call them the elder race. And the reason why I call them the elder race is simple, because biblically speaking, they're older than us, clearly, and they constitute a race. They're not us. They're different beings. They're a race. I call them the elder race. And I think their civilization is exceedingly ancient. And I think they're from somewhere else in the universe, frankly. And so, and that there's good guys and bad guys in this group, and that there's an ongoing conflict between the good guys and the bad guys, and have been for long before we were on the scene. And so, again, that's why I say it's galactic. The context is galactic. And so, that's them. That's that group. And by the way, I think that group is the group that ufologists have identified as the Nordics, or the Pleiades. the ones that we look like. Because in the biblical narrative, it's apparent that we look like them, or they look. I mean, they look like us, but it's more accurate to say we look like them. In every encounter, every single encounter that human beings have in the biblical narrative with the angels, they look like us. We look like them. It's not true, for example, that contrary to all the Catholic depictions of angels with wings and little fat cherubim, I call them the pedophilic cherubim that the Catholic Church has plastered all over the place, little chubby naked things. That's absolute fantasy. Fantasy. Do not think for one moment that is derived from the Bible. It's not. Angels never have wings in the Bible. And this is like a big shocker to most people. Angels don't have wings in the biblical text. They don't. Now, there's something called prophetic iconography. That's esoteric. That's communicative. That's not to be interpreted literally. There are instances where you see wings on angelic beings, but that's not to be taken literally. Most scholars will agree. That's not literal. It's prophetic. But in the literal encounters that people have with angels in the Bible, they're not even just light beings. They're just like us. They're eating and drinking. They're using technology. They have advanced vehicles of conveyance that they're flying around in. They have weapons of war. There's clearances. For example, both Abraham and Lot eat and drink with these guys. And so they're physical beings. They're not us, but we look a lot like them. In fact, in my book, I describe them as our older siblings.
Now, I wanted to ask you this, and in the short time that we have left, one of the things that I find so fascinating about the Old Testament is the specificity of years and age and height and size that far exceed anything. Now, I don't believe that they got it wrong, and I don't think that it was metaphor. When we are dealing with that, somebody being 800 years old or 1,000 years old or a specific height, are they being specific or is it metaphor?
The Bible is both a historical document, it's a prophetic document, and it's a poetic document. It encompasses every kind of figure of speech and every kind of a communicative device, literal device. In other words, sometimes it's relating history, and at other times it's prophetic iconography that is telling us something about future events. So it's not like the whole Bible can just be interpreted with a wooden literalism or just metaphoric and poetic. Right. Those are not the appropriate approaches. It is a very complex document. And when I say documents, many manuscripts, obviously, we know that, spanning thousands of years that were compiled into what we call the Old and New Testament. And then you add in some of the other extra-biblical texts, which are not in the canon of Scripture, but are cited by the apostles in the New Testament, such as the Book of Enoch. So it's very complex. It's not a simple document. And so, yes, there's literal historical fact, unquestionably, and has been proven to be the case, by the way. For example, the life of Jesus is not a metaphor. It is history. And nobody, even though for over a century now, secular scholars have been trying to debunk the historicity of Christ, they can't do it. You can't do it. Because he is a historical figure, and most of them have acquiesced to that fact. Yes, okay, Jesus was a historical figure. So we are dealing with history, and we're not just in the realm of mythology, where there's maybe some historical fact behind the mythos, like in some of the other documents, the ancient Indian documents, for example, and some of the other ancient documents. No, we're dealing with history, validated history in many cases, and I think that. When it comes to for example, you cited the age of the patriarchs. I do believe that the patriarchs lived that long. Why? Because they were very close to the prototypical human being, Adam. And all of us are degenerate. We have degenerated from Adam. In fact, I don't believe in evolution because I believe the very opposite of evolution is happening, not just to us, but to other living things. We are not evolving into more complex creatures. We are devolving. We are increasingly devolving. We are pathetic examples of what we once were. The progenitor of mankind, Adam, was phenomenal in his capabilities, in his physiology. He was everything a human could be. He was the strongest man and the smartest man to have ever lived combined. I mean, that's who our ancient progenitor was. Their genomes were not as mutated as ours are. They didn't have all of these genetic diseases. And it's a fact, by the way. We are genetic mutants. By the way, that's what cancer is. Cancer is a mutation in your genes. That's what causes cancer. Why is there so much cancer? Because the human species has degenerated so drastically from the original prototype. Things don't get more complex and better over time. They're subject to the force of entropy. They become more chaotic. They crumble. They deteriorate over time. Inanimate things and living things, including the human species.
You took entropy right out of my forehead. I was getting ready to go right there. And physics, entropy, on both the macro and the micro, is something that is inevitable, and that's it.
And if you talk to, my God, my brain is failing me right now. Population geneticists, for example, they will tell you, they will affirm that humanity is increasingly becoming genetically compromised over time because we build up mutations over the years, over the millennia. The human race we have been accumulating deleterious mutations. So we're like the X-Men, except we're the crappy X-Men. We're the X-Men whose mutations are all bad, right? They're debilitating.
Right.
So we're like the X-Men in wheelchairs, and we're the X-Men with crutches and getting chemotherapy in the cancer ward. We're not mutating and getting superpowers. Quite the opposite. We're crappy versions of Adam because we've degenerated. We are subject to entropy. And so if you talk to population geneticists, they use a term called era catastrophe. And that is this future event. And I talk about this in my book for people who want to delve deeper into that. Where there's this future event forecasted where the human genome is no longer going to be viable because it's going to be so laden with deleterious negative mutations. And so we're not even going to be able to be reproductively viable anymore because we're so crappy now. So people say, well, how can we live longer than 100, 200 years ago? Because we have a technological prop. We have the prop of technology. It's propping us up. It's a crutch. We have this crutch of technology that if you were to kick this crutch out from under of us, and if people dispute this, how many people do you know that have diabetes that if they were to suddenly not have access to their insulin, how long would they live?
Not long.
Not long. And how many of people would be dead within a week if we took all of the technology away? You no longer get your medications. You don't get your transplants. You don't get your stents. You tell me how good we would be looking, how fit the human species would look at that point.
Yeah,
we would be miserable. You know what? Our life expectancy would plummet. The average life expectancy would be where it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago. We'd be 40, 50, 60 years old, checking out of here.
Right. Without penicillin. Right?
Does that sound like evolution to you?
No, it doesn't. And I speak about entropy all the time, Timothy. Now, we're well past. I've got to wrap this, or we're going to get cut off by the network. So really quickly, where can everybody go and check out Alberino TV, and how often are you putting out new stuff?
I have a YouTube channel. Just go on YouTube, type in Timothy Alberino. I've been not very active on there, but I've got a lecture series I've been doing. It's a theological lecture series on the content of my book. If you're interested in my book, Birthright, the full title is Birthright, the Coming Post-Human Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth. It encompasses everything we've been talking about tonight. You can find that on Amazon and only on Amazon.com. Just type my name in or type in Birthright and you'll see it. And, I have a podcast, too, called The Alberino Analysis. The podcast is just the audio version of the videos I'm doing on YouTube. And you can go to my website, timothyalberino.com. There's one other thing I'd like to say. I'm doing an Amazon cruise from the 1st of February through the 5th. Anybody interested in going on that cruise with me is going to be a blast. Go check it out on my it's a conference too that I'm speaking at with a colleague of mine in the Amazon on a luxury boat from the 1st to the 5th of February. So if you're interested in that, go check it out on my website.
Man, I think I'm going to sign up for that. Timothy, I look forward to our next conversation, my friend. Thank you so much.
This was really fun.
This was a perfect night on the show, and I've got to go straight to credits. We literally went bumper to bumper tonight. Again, Timothy's links are over at jimmychurchradio.com, and of course, we've got it up throughout social media. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2021 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Fader Night, open lines all night long. Until then, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.